Hello, guys. So today's focus is ninth edition. And in addition, other than the codex and models, and David.
Ross, I'm going to cut you there. I'm going to ask you to replay what you just said because your audio cut out.
Oh, no.
So thank you very much, Duppy Man, for spotting that there. Yeah, I think we've just had a bit of internet connection issues there. Ross, sorry, take it away. What are we discussing today, buddy?
So yeah, we're discussing 9th edition. It is a year on now. I believe the Indomitus box set came out the end of July. So it's to give an idea, we're going to discuss the codexes that have been released, we're going to discuss the models that came out, and I think I want to get a personal view from both of us, David, on what do we think of 9th edition and the rules? Is it panning out? What did we enjoy? So that's kind of the main subjects we're going to cover, but obviously in this past year, what else has maybe been covered? If anyone's got any suggestions, let us know in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Well, I hope as well, the visuals we're going to have, as Ross just mentioned in the chat, there's a lot of content on there which you don't need to download. It's just more of a reference for you guys to kind of follow along the sort of discussion. So Ross, what shall we talk about first? The progress, the codex, the models? What do you want to touch on?
Let's start with the books first. I feel the books is a key area to start off with. It's a good reference point. So when it came to the codexes, in the video I did earlier this week, I sort of broke down the difference between 8th edition and 9th edition. I'm just bringing up my section of it here. And you can see that in a large part, there was a huge amount of codexes that came out in 8th in the sort of same time frame compared to 9th. To give you the breakdown, 8th edition had 9 Imperial books, 4 Chaos and 6 Xenos. In the same time frame of 9th edition, you had about 8 Imperial, 2 Chaos and 2 Xenos. And so you can see a much more reduction in Chaos, you can see a reduction in Xenos. Imperial is almost the same, but there's far more Space Marines in that one.
Yeah.
Now, there's an obvious thing to this. We have had a global pandemic that has obviously, in the whole world, had an effect on the economy and how we work. And then, you know, we've just had, I think they started off with a large amount of Space Marines, which took up the majority of the releases of books this year. So I'll give my thoughts on this first.
Yeah,
I really pushed to have Space Marines, you know, get them done, get them out the way, just out the door, and we can move on from there. Space Marines should have been just sort of the easy one to get done. We kind of knew that the new codex was going to come out and it'd be largely the same as the one before, but updated, and just get those books out. And I'd say they were successful in that one. But when I wanted them to focus on Space Marines, I didn't want that to be the detriment of Xenos and Chaos, and I feel that has been the case, especially on, well, just about on both sides.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say in the success part, they did address Drukhari. Now, Drukhari, when the new edition came out, they usually had multiple detachments to really make them work between, not Harlequins, between homunculuses, witches, and Cabal, and playing 9th, that would be really bad because you'd have to pay for detachments. So by them giving that codex an update, I thought was very, very, very important. The only other codex I think that could have done with that treatment, that was essential between the change of rules in 9th, was Chaos Demons. I feel that although we do see Chaos Demons favoured down the side of just playing one god, I feel there needed to be something to allow mixed attachments to make it easier. So success in Drakari, not so much in Chaos Demons, but we got such a favoritism for Imperial, and now we're a year and a bit on in this edition, and it's not looking so good.
Yeah.
And even when we're looking at the roadmap going forward, I can understand less 40k books because Age of Sigmar just had a new edition, so there'll be more Age of Sigmar stuff. We've only got, I think, 3 books coming out in the next 3 months, and we don't know what 2 of them are. One is Black Templars, another Space Marine to add to the tally. And it does worry me a wee bit, just, especially when you look at Chaos Space Marines, people are dying, not for the 2 wounds thing. People are going, we want 2 wounds. I'm honestly not that fussed because there's so much damage too. I just want the Legion traits to be better. Okay. Nothing's worse than like what was it, a Baron's Law, Black Legion. They've got +1 to leadership and they can advance and fire rapid fire weapons as if they're advanced. It's terrible in the modern context, and it makes playing favourite like stuff like Abaddon. We've got a great model for it. I just don't want to play Black Legion at all.
I just want to resonate a few things. Is when you really look at it to see how many codexes for each section, it is actually quite frightening.
Yeah, you've got, and I think I've put a bit detailed one of what each of them are. I didn't put down how many Space Marine ones there are, but at least the majority of them. In the Imperial side, I only think 2 of them are not Space Marines, Adeptus Auritas and Adeptus Mechanicus. So you're looking at 6 Space Marine codexes. That makes up half the codexes released so far. This whole edition.
I'll maybe take a different spin on it as well with codexes and supplements. A year on in 9th edition, If I don't take the whole Imperium has too much argument, because I think that's pretty obvious, I don't want to nail that to the coffin and then bury it. But but some of the codexes, if I look at the codexes that have actually been produced, some of them have had really good sort of updates. In particular, I do mean again the Imperium ones, but some of them have had some really, really bad updates. Such as, I think when Necrons came out, in my opinion, it was really powerful, but it was too much. There was too much of everything all around the place, command protocols and all that sort of jazz. And there was a really quick lesson to learn there that sometimes less is more. It just has to be the right sort of rule set to make it actually work. I've started to see that a little bit with some of the codexes, and then I've seen it shift back all over again with the recent Death Guard and Thousand Suns codex release, which unit-wise I won't touch on because I think these units needs to be added to flesh out Thousand Suns. Not so much Death Guard, but definitely Thousand Suns. Sure. But I thought they were going to rein back sort of the rules a little bit, and then they went, here's your 2 Primarchs and let's just give you everything. So your new codex, you're going to get all these warlord traits. You're going to get access to all these cool Legion sort of rules and stuff. And then here's a sort of cabal for each sort of part of Death Guard, a cabal for each sort of Thousand Suns. And you've seen that now in the Orcs codex, and you've seen that in a few other codexes. I'm being probably very minority here, but I think that's a little bit too much. I miss the old days where it was just you had your main overall rule for the force you took, Orcs for example, and then a one unique rule which just went for the faction itself. I didn't need a whole bunch of extra stuff to try and follow along and then make sure it all synergizes and it's legal. That's one of my main criticisms for the codex. I think less is more. I think some of the codexes have just not really done well with that. They've put too much in thinking we want lots of stuff. Not always.
So loads of things on that one. There's the 2 points. I'll probably bring them in a little bit later because it is touching on those ones. But when you talk about Thousand Suns and the Death Guard, you got the companies for Death Guard. I forget what they're called, and the cabals for Thousand Suns. I think and then you've got, I think, Grey Knights. You've got hosts or something.
The Grey Knights, you basically got your brethren, your brotherhoods.
Your brotherhoods, and I think that was to keep it more in line that Orcs had. Orcs and Adeptus Mechanicus, so Mechanicus had their Forge Worlds and Orcs had their clans, so they wanted a similar idea for Thousand Suns and Death Guard. And the thing is, they did it in such an unusual way that I'm not entirely happy with. But I agree with you. It adds on so much, especially in the Death Guard one. It seemed a little bit messy to me, and maybe a wee bit with the Primarchs as well. So it was interesting you said something there as well. I really do want to focus on, and it was the idea of strengths and everything. And there's a question I wanted to ask you: is it better for a codex to come out too strong and then weaken it through erratas, and then that brings in, codex creep, which people don't like, versus releasing them being too weak and then trying to boost them in an FAQ? Personally, I think it's better if they come out too powerful and then they just sort of hammer it down. You saw that with Adeptus Mechanicus, they removed the core words from the Iron Shroud Balistaris and Sidonia Dragoons, and that took away, Iron Shroud Balistaris were way too good with the core keywords, and then this moved them down quite a wee bit from a must-take to an option. And in part, it doesn't always work. I think Iron Hands were maybe an example of that they had to FAQ. But I do stand by that. I played Drukhari, I played Dark Elder so many times where they just came out and they were so weak, and I was like, great, that's me. And this was maybe when they, this is back in 7th edition, when I'd be like, great, this codex is pretty naff. That's me for this edition. I sort of stand by the point that maybe they should start strong, and then it's easier to FAQ strengths than, start weak and not do a codex creep and try and FAQ up. What's your thoughts on codex creep and the power levels? Has it been way too far? Because Drukhari and Adeptus Mechanicus both dominated tournaments for a while, I believe.
Yeah, I need to give it in two answers, though. One answer is, I would agree, I think you probably want to, if you go by the current trend, you want to start your codex strong and then let it get errated down. I'm more in line with that. Because, and also, you know what? If you're a codex that just come out, you've probably gone through 12 months of your codex being one of the weakest, and now it's came round to your turn, so you're finally getting some fun until we hit you with that hammer, and then you take your rules down again. But the true feeling I have for the codex creep, and this is for codexes in general, which 9th edition and 8th edition haven't fixed the codex creep problem. I think it could be resolved with a bit more of dedication on the backroom team, the writing staff, the publishing staff, the production staff, especially with the company posting a lot of profits. There's certainly a lot of ways to get your logistics in order. You release all your codexes at once. Simple as, here's all your, we've got 9th edition, boom. Here's a codex, not an index, there's a difference there. But here is a dedicated codex for every army all at once. And then what's going to happen a year down the line? So you get, 3 years on average for every edition? Maybe 4 if you count the pandemic now. Every year, that's when your errata comes out. But everyone's errated at the same time. Now, you kind of get that a little bit, but it never seems to gel or work because your codexes are all at different stages of development. So you have all your codexes out at the one time. Boom, a year down the line, you have your errata. Boom, errata. And then you release the new range of codexes for the 10th edition, so on and so forth.
So the main reason I believe they don't release them all at once, because they did do that with Index. Now, that was just data sheets, no real major rules in that one. The two reasons why I believe they don't do it, the majority one is money. Because if they brought out all the books at once, the people who, let's face it, collect multiple armies through an edition, they usually, like when Necrons came out, a lot of people jumped on the Necron train, and then they'd do that for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. And then there'd be a new release, and then they'd be excited about that one. Well, if all the books come out at once, those people might center on one project, and then there's no big hype thing for the next 3 years. So on a business sense, I get it on that one. But I partly do agree with you that they should do a much better way of updating a codex in its entirety.
Yeah.
And I don't know entirely how you do that. Maybe it needs to be an incredibly high chapter approved. For instance, maybe a chapter approved that, certainly in the area of Chaos Space Marines, I know everyone wants 2 wounds, and maybe there'll be a way to do that. All the data cheats that would change, here's the chapter approved with it. But it's like, Chaos Space Marines needs the Legion rules changed. Smaller traits could survive. It's a tricky, I get why they don't want to in terms of money, bringing all the codexes out at once. But maybe they should, and
Yeah.
it might annoy people that if you bring them out at once and then in a year, like it might be a year and a half's time. So you'd say in an edition, assuming an edition lasts roughly 3 years now, you would get all the codexes out at the beginning of an edition, and then you'd get a version 2 around a year and a half's time afterwards. And that allows them to be mistakes that need to be redone in the reprint. It allows things that, that just haven't panned out well, that they can make changes. Because when they bring out a codex at the moment, it roughly lasts a whole edition. Space Marines were the only codex, other than Chaos Space Marines got a volume 2, but that was really just adding Abaddon. Space Marines and Obliterator's updated datasheets. Space Marines, I'm not going to keep talking about. Space Marines got the only one that was a new codex in 8th edition. Everyone else waited to 9th. And maybe there's something to say about, here is, all the codex at the start. It's raw. Things might be wrong. We can errata them. But by a year and a half's time, 18 months' time, they've taken all the data on the stuff that's wrong, and they can reproduce the volume 2, and that would last another 18 months. Is that going to be costly in one-term packages for those who collect every codex? Yeah, it's going to be expensive. And maybe it doesn't work out for them in terms of money because they want to spread out the hype.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, that's what they kind of want to do. But is it better for the community? I don't know on that one. I can see both the positives and negatives in it.
Quickly, just want to add on to that. I know we're not going to talk about this in this particular podcast, but it's certainly something worthy to note. You bring out the codexes all at the start of the edition. You've got your erratas coming up every sort of year. What a better way to buy people into the app, because we're going to automatically update your app with all the codexes all at once. No more PDFs, no more website links, no more double checking this or have I got an errata this. Whatever your rule set is on your app, that's your rules. And it's always updated. What better way? Because let's not kid ourselves. I see in a lot of forums, can my unit do this now? Can my unit do that? Have you checked the errata? And we say that in our battle reports as well. Let's check the errata. No, let's have a sophisticated app that works. Not going to go into that. And it's just got it all up to date and works perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, the app's a complicated conversation because obviously they've got, especially when it's codexes, you've got people complaining at the moment just in terms of posts they did.
Yeah.
But, you've got the subscription fee and then you've got to actually buy the book itself, which I suppose if you're buying the book itself, then you got the app. But there is, can you put your book on the app and not pay the subscription and still get the updated version of the book, or do you have to pay the subscription?
It's a very good question. I honestly don't know. I think you can. I honestly think you can.
I would hope that would be the case. That the fact that use the app in terms of if you own a book, put it in and it's updated because you bought the book, and then for the additional services you pay the army builder. I think that is the case. Don't quote me on that one. I think that is the case, and that does make it very, very accurate. But I've not used the app very much, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I won't say any more because I could talk about the app for a whole episode. I don't want to do that. I'm the one in the channel that uses it, and I'm trying to use it as much as possible to my own detriment, but it will get there, and I will get there.
So when it comes to app at the moment, my theory on the app, just to say in it, is I'm going to give it 12 weeks, 3 months, see how it lands, how it's been updated, because any of these services, as they start new, they don't usually come out in the best service. It's a beta, and I mean, they've kind of had a beta for a year, but they're trying something else, exploring the lore. I give it 12 weeks, see how it is. If it's in a good, steady space of new content, I'll probably subscribe.
Cool. All right.
So the other thing as well I want to discuss is, and we kind of maybe touched on this in terms of how we talked about codexes. You might obviously remember the beta rules when we had Space Marines, Bolter Rule Discipline, and Sister of Battle beta rules, and I'd say both of them were a large success. The Bolter one allowed a little bit changing stuff, and then they brought it into the Codex, and same with Sister of Battle. Their faith system got entirely changed from the beta because people just went, it's terrible. Would that have been maybe a good call with well-known difficult rules? The main one being Reanimation Protocol. They should have definitely betaed that one. And the other one is the Tau Empire, what they call their shield drone, well, drones in general.
Yeah, protection protocols.
I think they definitely need to beta rule that drone stuff. They should be like, look, how does the idea of our drones at the moment work? and give us like 6 months of feedback, and then we'll think about it in the codex.
It's the only thing going for Tau to troll players. Don't take it away.
Well, the drone rule changed so much.
I like it now, though.
Yeah, so if it's good, I don't really know at the moment, but I know it went through so many iterations and FAQs.
Yeah.
I feel it needs an FAQ to get it right, get it where it needs to be.
Yeah, you're totally right. The FAQs or beta rule codexes, I actually really like them.
Mm-hmm.
I really like them because beta rules is something which you should always have. There should always be a constant, ongoing playtest. Although you still release all your findings on a structured manner, not piecemeal, which we sometimes get with the erratas and FAQs.
Mm-hmm.
Release it across all army wide your findings. But the beta rules is great. Let the community, and not just competitive players, give the beta rules to the wider audience, and those that wish to use them can use them and provide constructive feedback. Your competitive players, your non-competitive players, your match play players, your narrative, your open play, whatever that may be. Let us all have a chance of looking at it, and then you're collecting a really good data sample source from all different forms of the game and how armies are being used across all the way the playstyles.
Yep.
That to me sounds like an invaluable piece of research. And guess what? GW, you're giving us the responsibility. It's us that are trying to find the solutions, and that sounds like less work for you guys. Give us the books, we'll happily play it. We're involved in your hobby for a reason.
Yeah, it does require, you're going to get, whenever you ask the public for feedback, and I used this as an example, I was speaking to my mum recently in something, I said it's always got to be careful about getting public feedback, because otherwise you'll end up with Boaty McBoatface. You've got to be, so you've got to be very, very careful on it. But there is invaluable tools to it. In the 40k rule-wise, you'll have people going, it's so underpowered. Oh no, how could you make this unit underpowered? When really, you just want it to be so overpowered it's unbelievable.
I agree.
And then you have people going, it's too overpowered, when actually it's fine. You need to get honest feedback. I don't know how entirely you get it, but a beta system can't hurt. And in the tournament scene, I'd arguably say, on an official capacity, you never use beta rules in tournaments. It should be rules as written. But really, I can't affect tournament organizers. That's kind of their call. But I don't think it's a thing that can hurt. It's beta rules. Is if your opponent agrees to test it, great. If they say no, then they say no. It should be your opponent's decision to allow it, but it provides invaluable data to us in Games Workshop about the mindset going forward. I think it did a great job, because Space Marines were rubbish in the start of 8th edition. I don't think they did particularly well. Then they got a whole bunch of extra rules, and their new codex was way too powerful.
Yeah.
And then Adeptus Sororitas, they gave you the idea of what they wanted. Feedback was given, and I think they produced quite a solid codex because of it. If they'd done that with Necrons, I think it would have been great. Drones, I think it might be a good idea. And I don't know, the other one I would argue is Chaos Demons, a system that rewards you for taking multiple gods rather than just kind of favouring one or favouring all four, but take just giant stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think in that area, if we had beta rules, I would be really interested.
Yeah, it's a lot to chew through. Do you want me to give you a wee sort of summarisation of what I feel about the codexes a year on?
Yeah, give us a conclusion to this one before we move on to models.
Yeah. So, really simple. It's my conclusion is we've not got the right fix yet. We're not there yet. 8th edition codexes have clearly got... 8th edition. I mean, 9th edition codexes. Clearly got a way to go in how they're being produced, their timing they're being produced, how they're finding their current rules, so who's deciding the balance, etc. It's got a long way to go, and I don't think we're going to see a solution when it comes to 10th edition either. So for the remaining couple of years in this edition, I think we're just going to see much of the same. And unfortunately, it'll probably be disappointment. So this is a topic for 9th edition I don't think we'll see fixed.
I don't think so. I think we've now missed that year period, and now we're moving on to... This is the time of Age of Sigmar, quite frankly. We should have had the majority of codexes out by now, and we have not, and that is very disappointing in many ways. And we know that the future it might actually struggle as well.
Yeah,
we'll only have to see in terms of codexes, but I feel we see the problems in many books, and I think we've just sort of missed it. Again, we can say the global pandemic may have made problems for it, but the end result is the end result.
Yeah, still the same. Fair
So,
enough.
David, let's go on to models next. So, obviously, we've had a huge amount of new models that have appeared. Now, at the moment, if you have a look, well, basically, the Imperial's got far more models. I'm just going to bring up the stats on that one.
So nothing new from what we said about the codexes then?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So to bring up the stats on that one, Imperials, I believe, and there was 28 of them that came out for Imperial. Now I might be missing one or two. I might have missed. The Gladiator had like 3 different data sheets or something. I just counted it as one. Chaos got 5 models, and Xenos got 23. So actually, Imperial and Xenos are very close. And if you included Orcs in the Xenos side, you'd actually be at 40. But Orcs don't look like they've really been released till September and October, so I didn't include them. But if I did, they've got about 17 new units coming out,
Yeah.
which brings the Xenos out to be much higher. But again, we're seeing such a favoritism in Space Marines. I think they're obviously the one that got the most. What Space Marines
I'm
get
gonna
in
have to ban you
general?
from that word during the remainder of this podcast. We get
What
it. They get Space Marines. We get it. They're getting all the toys.
So yeah, they got, well, actually they didn't get the most. It was Necrons. Space Marines got 16 units, and Necrons get 22. And then Adeptus Sororitas got 7, and that's what sort of bolstered up quite a lot on the Imperial side. But actually, it was Necrons that got the most there, looking at my stats, if I got it right. So that's quite good on that side, but still the Imperium.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, if you include Orcs, Xenos actually goes way, way ahead. So good in that side. The thing I'd probably say, the success, the 2 success I'd say for 9th edition when it came to models is, one, I'm very happy with the models they brought out for Space Marines, because they took Primaris, and Primaris were largely a ranged unit focused force, and they went, here is the combat stuff, here is the bikes, here is the assault intercessors, here's the blade guards, here is the things that your combat based armies, your Black Templars, your Blood Angels, your Space Wolves will probably want, because you are a melee focused force. And to then go, well, I'm going to take the new toys of Primaris. Oh, we're all mainly ranged. That's rubbish. Now you got your bikes and your combat and stuff. And I think that was really, really good. We then also got the Xenos side, Necrons, with a huge amount of difference. And again, they focused on melee, which I used to play heavy melee force with Necrons. And I was delighted to see a focus on that. But they took the iconic character, which you predicted would be released, and everyone went, nah, you're wrong, the Silent King. And that was such a big addition for Necrons that really brought a bit more character, because that's what I like about the Primarchs coming back, and these big central characters. They brought back the Silent King. I really, really enjoyed that. So I think it has been very, very good 9th edition for the Xenos side, and the potential for the future, especially Orcs, is looking highly promising. Again, the boys updated, again, bosses updated, and then I like the Beast Naga idea. I thought that was a good idea in the Horus Heresy game, where you'd maybe get like Iron Warriors would have like automata that only they could get. It's kind of the same idea with Beast Nagas. I'd maybe like to see that happen a bit more, but it'd increase the range exponentially if you did that. But it looks like Xenos in 9th edition, if you include Orcs, have done really well, and I think that is a great success. And they've added the combat to Space Marines, which is also a major success. Chaos, well, you had some stuff in 8th edition, and you've got 2 Demon Primarchs already. You know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I'll look at the numbers there. Space Marines, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not surprised to see their numbers as high as they are, purely because we already knew from 8th edition transitioning into 9th that Primaris was an unfinished project.
Yes, that's a very accurate thing to say.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of the model range, which should have been there to begin with upon release. But that's fine. They chose to stagger the release in that manner. So we're now getting to see those units come into Space Marines. So 9th edition, yeah, their numbers are going to be naturally high. Imperial Imperial Guard or Astra have probably bolstered these numbers quite high as well, to a degree, because, well, they've got the new troops, the new Gaunt's Ghosts and things like that.
Well, so Gaunt's Ghosts are not
Well, no, it's like
actually
unit. Yeah.
no, it's you can't get them anymore. They were
Oh,
I didn't
really?
have things that were. So I did put them in here, and I put the Death Corpse of Krieg, but I'm imagining they're going to come out. I didn't want to actually include so much, but like Gaunt's Ghost, I maybe should have actually removed them from the Imperial
Fair
side.
enough.
I don't think you can actually get Gaunt's Ghost
Yeah.
anymore on the website, which I'm gutted I didn't actually get one, but I'll have to look at secondary sources for that one. I did manage to get the limited edition Katachan Colonel somehow from a place, so I'll probably locate Gaunt Ghost at one point.
Yeah.
But you know, they were updated by these Astra Militarum ones, but there've been. Well,
Yeah.
this is another rant from me, Dave. I'll make it quick. Astra
Okay.
Militarum characters have all been released as special edition characters. So you had Severin Rain, which was a Black Library one, and then I
Mm-hmm.
think there was another character that came out. That was one. They never actually update the ones in the Codex. They make them all Black Library or events ones. We just need new Astra Militarum
Yeah.
characters. But that's another rant. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
going off
No,
on a
it's fine.
tangent.
So Astra, and then again, just coupling onto that argument, Adeptus Sororitas, we knew that was a sort of major push for 9th edition. So again, we knew their army was unfinished, and we knew there was a lot of hints that new models were coming in. So these all bolster Imperium's numbers, which I'm not surprised at. And then if I'll come on to the type of models and the look at them in a minute. Xenos side, we already knew a lot of work needed done on Xenos, although it looks like Necrons pretty much took out the majority bulk of Xenos. But Silent King, I can't disagree. First of all, I nailed it, so I'm going to toot my horn for that every single time I can. But
Well played.
Chaos, you're right, have Primarchs. Imperial have a Primarch. Xenos didn't really have something of nature. You had Big Gaz, you had a Swarm Lord, but none of them felt as though they compared in comparison to like a Primarch. They just didn't. Now the Xenos collective have the Silent King, so they're finally being represented a little bit more. And you know what? Adding in Bellicor for Chaos Demons, I know it's a Chaos Primarch, but demons seem to be this only world of their own with models and the rules and everything. They're just their own. I know they're Chaos, but I always think demons is demons, not even Chaos. It's like this own little unique thing. So giving them representation, great. I'm quite happy to see that. I know you had Scarbrand and Bloodthirsters, but they were basically Land Raiders for the Chaos Demons. That is your big, bulky model. No, Bellicor is your Primarch for demons. So it was a nice release there too. Have they released the...
Just to say in terms of demons, how I always look at Chaos, and I look at Chaos Developing Project, Chaos Demons are like the Adeptus Sororitas, the Faith, if you will, and where Adeptus Sororitas now have their High Lords, I forget what her name is, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Morven Val.
Morven Val, and then you've got Bellicor for Chaos Demons. You know, you get these, you know, equivalents in terms of, you know, I'd love to see more Demonkin, you know, represent like Astra Militarum force in Chaos. But Chaos has a lot of potential in the future. But yes, you're right. Bellicor coming out as a key figure, the Sand King is a key figure. Is a point I'm going to ask you later on. Is like we're seeing these key figures, Abaddon in 8th, come out, and Gazgul Thraka. It's very, very interesting to see narrative characters get these incredible models.
Yeah, that can already. I'm going to nail on which the next one will be.
Oh really?
But I'll let you ask me that in another time or whenever you feel like wanting me to take another guess to success.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and then the type of models they've released, from my opinion, are right. They all fit the type of armies they've been released for. Grey Knights, I didn't want any updates. I just wanted Crow. We got that. You've got the Space Marines. We didn't really get a revamping of models. We just got the additions that were missing from 8th edition. We've still got a few more possibly missing, but we're getting there. We're very close now to Primaris probably getting its range that we want. Adeptus Sororitas, can't argue. They needed those new models and those updates. Necrons, I can argue a little bit because I think the model range looks absolutely fantastic and it's great to see the Void Dragon. But why they never released a kit for the Nightbringer and the Deceiver is beyond me, because now it makes those two models, not rule-wise, because they certainly don't pale in comparison rule-wise, just model-wise, they don't fit now. They do not fit. Yeah. The scale and size of the models. So that's a missed opportunity, and you could have just released a kit. Even the Transcendent Catan doesn't fit now. So they need to work on that a little bit. And then finally, not just the type of models they've released, because they all work really well with the armies, the casts in general have been fantastic. I actually have to compliment Graham's Workshop. I quite like the cast they've done, especially for Adeptus Sororitas. In particular, Orcs, I know you referenced Beast Snagas. I think the new orc model range looks nice and chunky and feels like orcs. And the new Necron models, I quite like the look of. I just think there should have been other forms in that codex, very much like scorpion looking models and stuff like that. Big giant. I'm basically riffing off of Tomb Kings, but take some Tomb King models and then adapt it to mechanical size. That's what I would have liked. And I also would have possibly liked to see a new flying addition to Necrons. Because the Doom Scythe and the Night Scythe is pretty much the exact same model, just with a different gun underneath. Some new type of flyer to change up that sort of the game would have been quite nice, but it is what it is.
It is what it is on that one. So to ask you a bit more on a question, this one, let's look at Necrons and Orcs. They've been highly successful taking these, not some of them are old, like they updated the troops, they updated the HQs, and then they added stuff on top of them, and I think they've done largely good. Now, if we talk about Craftworld, the whole range in my eyes needs to be redone. But between Tau, Tyranids, Drukhari, who should get a similar sort of update? I'm not including Harlequins, because their models don't need updated, they just need more. Versus Town, Tyranids, and Drukhari, which one, in your opinion, I don't think I'm forgetting another Xenos Force. I wouldn't count Gene Sears for the same reason as
Harlequins.
Yeah. But of those three main, because I think they represent, other than Necrons, Orcs, and Craftworlds, they represent three main Xenos Force, and I think each one of them could do with a bit of an update, in terms of maybe their HQs and their troops. Who would you go for?
I'll give you the right answer, and then I'll give you the answer that my heart says. So my head says one, but my heart says another.
Love it. Do it.
My head, actually, let's go with that first, because that's really simple. Doesn't give much explanation. It's Craftworlds. My head says Craftworlds because they've got a humongously dated range. They really, really do. And not only is it a dated range, I'm looking at the scaling in models compared to like Space Marines and their counterparts. They don't feel the right size at the moment.
I didn't want to include Craftworlds in this one so much because
I thought you did. Sorry.
No, I didn't, because they don't need. I don't think they need a small update. They need like an Adeptus Sororitas update. Yeah. They need all the scale of models. Now, a lot of their vehicles could survive, I would probably say, but almost all their troops. I hate the fact they've got chain swords. That really annoys me.
And
I hate it. And Power Fists. I hate it. I think they need to be more something different. I have ideas. We can talk about it now.
They don't use such rudimentary weaponry.
But I don't think they need to be in the same as Necrons and Orcs, where Necrons and Orcs largely got like their troops, a bit of their HQs expanded, and then a different troop on top of it.
Yeah.
But they didn't update too many of their old units. They created new units and updated like their basic troops and HQs. That's the kind of idea I'm going for.
Fine. Well, I'll give you my heart's answer then. My heart's answer, because that then does fit in. And I can already see Duppy Man's put it in the comments. It would be Tyranids. Now, they definitely don't need the biggest update because they have actually been gifted a few editions ago with some very nice monsters. And their Gene Stealers sort of came out. They got an update for Gene Stealers, I believe, either just before or around the Gene Stealer Cult editions. You've got a sort of newer sort of cast model on there where you can put shoulder pads on and different faces and stuff like that. But for Tyranids, what I think Tyranids, the reason I'm saying my heart says them is they are such an integral part of the lore and such a fan favourite army. Let's not kid ourselves. Tyranids are also probably the number one faction of evilness out there. I know you say chaos, it's always Tyranids for me. They're the Great Devourer. They're the number one that everyone will lose to eventually. And they don't have a monster that fits the bill of matching Primarchs. They just don't. When they should. The Swarm Lord, I mentioned this in a few previous podcasts ago, that needs the Primarch treatment so badly. And if you don't want to do the Swarm Lord GW, then do as the Norn Queen. Make the Norn Queen model again and make it this grand, doesn't have to be a combat thing, a humongous grand support character. Very much like as well, it can do a lot of its attacks, very similar to that Bone Orsiarch character. He himself isn't the strongest, but his scenic base and all of his little additional guys that he fights with makes him quite deadly in combat. But he's got lots of additional support rules. We need that for Tyranids. They need a key update to give them a Primarch-esque model. The Forge World stuff doesn't cut it. The Forge World stuff's kind of left in the lurch, and it's also quite old. The Hydrils, or whatever they're called, look really terrible casts. The giant Biomorph, I don't like it. it's too thin, right? It's too thin. It looks like you can chop its leg off with a chainsword from a Space Marine and you've defeated it. It doesn't work for me. But they need a big Nidzilla of some kind. And then, yes, I would say if you wanted to pick an older unit that needs just a cast update, your Gaunts. Your Gaunts do need an update. Because they're sort of using the same cast for quite a while ago. And I think most of the Gaunts you can buy, a lot of people just buy the quick fit ones, the two halves of a model, you piece them together, and there you go. That kind of says it all. That's your troop choice, is two sides of a model, you clip it together. So, aye, Tyranids is what the heart says, Ross.
I'm in large part agreement with you on that. Because, as I said, you look at Necrons and Orcs, it is HQs and troops, and Tyranids have had a huge update in 5th, 6th, and 7th. 0 since then, but they had, Morlock and all these big creatures come out. It's their small, Tyranids are big creatures, small creatures, and they haven't had their small creatures really updated in a very, very long time. You said the Gene Sealers, but I think there's a lot of room to play on that one. So if you're top troops and HQs, and then maybe an iconic, big, massive stuff, Tyranids are the way to go. Drukhari may be one of the oldest ones out of all of them that haven't had an update, but their troops and stuff still do really well.
Yeah.
And Tau's an interesting one. They have had their troops updated recently, or at least in the past decade, unlike the other two. But Tyranids, I think, need the Necron and Orc treatment probably sooner, while Craftworlds needs Adeptus Sororitas, or if anything, a Primaris one. Not exactly Primaris, but you get the idea that a lot of their range. I look at their HQ choices, and I'm like, some of them are probably older than me. So,
do you think Games Workshop is maybe just too afraid to tackle Craftworlds because it's such a daunting project?
Let me think on that one, Dave. That's a good question.
Because I think its time has came and gone, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not saying it's it's gone as and it should never be touched again now. But I think there always comes a sort of regeneration period in armies. You seem to have them recycled every now and then. Just a new cast. And it seems to be Craftworld seems to be the only army that just has like an infinite timeline, and it's every year we talk about it and it goes by every year, and it's been going on for a few editions now. And I feel that maybe GW had their opportunity a few editions ago, didn't choose to pull the trigger on it, and now it's gone. And they've got so many other projects that Craftworld still might be so far down the line.
I feel their time should have been Psychic Awakening, the end of 8th edition. I think that should have been the period. But keep in mind, at the end of Psychic Awakening, 2020 happened in the global pandemic. But they should have been like a year or two planned in advance. I think they may have had the choice between Necrons and Craftworlds for going into 9th edition. They went, well, we want more Space Marines, so we want an obvious villain. Let's go for Necrons.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to Eldari in general, we will see a complete... I think the next stage will be Orcs are getting their update, and I think Xenos may get a bit kicked to the sideline. Next year, we might see a big Chaos push, and then I have no idea what the tail end of 9th is going to be, but it could be 10th edition will be the edition of the Eldari. Narratively, the Eldari will pull off some trick that will cause a lot of carnage to the universe, and they become a threat.
I'm going to nail it right now, exactly what's going to happen, because I already know what's going to happen, because I can just guess that thing.
Do it.
10th edition story is going to be that Necrons are defeating the Imperium. That's it. So Necrons versus Imperium's this big war. You've got the Chaos on the side doing their wee things with Magnus and with Mortarion. But no, the end of 9th edition is the Tomb King, not the Tomb Kings, the Tomb Worlds have awoken. The Necrons are really beginning to drive deep in Imperium territory, and it's all looking lost. And who's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, arch nemesis of Necrons? The Eldari.
Yeah. Yep.
The Eldari was the ones that basically defeated the Necrons for the old ones, well, with a bit of help of the Orcs, early Orcs. So yeah, like that could be a perfect excuse for Eldari to come in. Eldari appear out of nowhere and save the day with their new revamped weaponry. They've actually been recolonizing worlds. They've actually been developing new technology. They're not been in the decline like everyone thought. And Eldari launched back out into the galaxy in a glorious, triumphant fanfare, very much like the Necrons done. Necrons were asleep and dying out, then they've came back and seized their land again. Same with Eldari.
Yep. I think to round off the models, let's round that off. I think in terms of models, I think 9th edition has done well. We've seen the objective Space Marines, move them into the melee force. Given that option is great. Necrons did a fantastic job. They expanded Adeptus Sororitas. They basically we updated Adeptus Sororitas, now we expanded it. And then, although it doesn't count this year, Orcs, they've done a great job as well. So 9th, compared to Codexes, I don't think they did a good job. So far, models, everyone would love to say Craft Worlds and the Lion and a plastic Thunderhawk gunship. The memes. But the actual work they've done, I think, has been a good job.
I'm the same. I agree with the models. I think it's been an absolute success for 9th edition compared to the previous ones. And long may it continue. Just let's start working on the right ones.
So, in the last part, David, let's go into the actual gameplay. And this is the rules of the rules of how they've gone. How do we feel we've enjoyed the rules and the actual game in terms of where it's changed between 8th edition and 9th edition? And what's our thoughts on that? Do you want me to begin, or do you want to begin?
I'll begin this time. So the rules for 9th edition, I've had my ups and downs with it. Quite simple. I've had my ups because I like the addition of the core keyword, first and foremost, because it's kind of reined in all that reroll abuse, which, don't get me wrong, I did that myself on numerous occasions, but I'm glad it's not fixed the problem yet, but it's certainly a step in the right direction, and I have to compliment Games Workshop for implementing that. Good step. It's got a bit of work to go. The unique rules that a lot of armies have really fit the narrative and fit the purpose of the armies and models that you're using. A lot of really fun stuff out there. And a lot of the universal rules, and I don't mean universal rules like how you do the fight phase. I mean universal rules like how smoke launchers are done, things like that. These sort of stratagems which every army has access to in a similar way. I like that. Everyone's got a similar basic tool chest to work with their stratagems, plus your additional ones which are unique to you. If I was, though, to take another side and look at the stuff I don't quite like, I mentioned this in the terrain podcast, I don't like the terrain rules. I never will. I'm very biased. I like the fact they gave them rules. I'm not against that. I just don't like how much. And I don't like how the rules, and monetary-wise and business-wise it makes sense, but I don't like how the rules are clearly designed only for their terrain, which, by the way, they're allowed to do. It's their product. But they must be aware the community at large has so many other forms of terrain, scratch-built terrain, and I don't like how some of the rule set just doesn't quite fit. It seems too complicated for that dedicated reason because they know their terrain fits the rules perfectly, and others will have that slight problem. And then finally, I don't quite like how some of the codexes are just bloated with rules. The point of 8th edition and transition into 9th was this new fast play idea. Here's the core rules everyone has. You just need your codex for your data sheets. We're kind of really beginning to slowly transition back into 6th and 7th edition, which I advocated back in the time. I've got no issues with. I loved those editions. Yeah, there was a lot of rules, but I'd played through so many editions I was very familiar with it. Even new edition, they changed the rules so slightly, but you always knew roughly what it meant.
Yes.
We are kind of going back into that mold, not with universal rules in the rulebook, but just individual codexes are becoming a massive rulebook in itself.
Yeah.
And that's my take on it just now.
So, yeah, I'll go into mine, this in terms of the gameplay. There's 2 points when I'm saying how much I've enjoyed 9th edition. The first one is a personal one. I was, and you know us very well, David, I was very unwell at the start of 9th edition. I've had a long history of back problems, and last year it just all came down. I had to get I got small surgeries done, and it just meant I really couldn't play and enjoy the game. Now, the part that I traded that for is before, in 2019, I learned how to paint, and that allowed me to not stress my back, and I got into painting. Fantastic. But in terms of playing, even now I do struggle to enjoy a game because it can be too painful. Now, in terms of the actual rules, largely the thing I think is a positive is that they have brought board control back to the field, to the importance, by going, one of the main ways you can score points and lead away is by getting board control. So if you just castle up and stay in the corner, you will cause destruction, but a good way to control and get points is by using board control. And so mobility is important, melee combat's important. By forcing this, it was very, very good, and I thought it was a great decision. But the other parts I don't enjoy is, one, we kind of lost, though they have better ruled them, the Maelstrom of Wars. We've kind of lost that, the almost RNG nature of the game, but I don't want to use RNG as that term because it's not right. The random events of a game in the middle of it, where a card could decide, the deck that you decide and then the cards you draw just don't reward you. And that's nature of random. Same as we roll dice, sometimes they don't reward you. And I like that nature. It made the game quite interesting. The other part is, I don't find the games in any way in 9th edition, all of them are the same. The only difference between them is where the objective markers are and slightly where we deploy, and that is kind of it. The missions feel way too similar to each other all the time, and this is because I think in a tournament scene, the missions are perfect. Why? Because you're rewarded with your pre-game preparation.
Yeah.
So you decide your lists, which allows you to decide your secondaries that your list is going to be very able to do. So you're going to choose secondaries before any game, probably, because you've got a mobile army and you're like, I know I'm going to take points. I'm not going to cause destruction. I want to take board control. So I'm going to take these secondaries. Almost the game, it hasn't been decided, but the entirety of how it's going to go is decided before you've put a mod on the field. And there's no mid-game dramas. There's no, you got a bad pool of cards and it's going to change things around. I just don't get that mid-game feeling, which really kind of hurts. And that's the part I can dislike, and it's made all the games feel way too similar.
Yeah, yeah, okay. The games do feel way too similar, and they've tried their best, I think, to change that, especially with like the Maelstrom of War editions and things like that, but it's still a million miles away. I fully agree. We did a podcast on randomization. Do you think that randomization added back to like the winning points and scoring points would go to solve that, or be an element of solving that?
I think the best way to do it is, you need to keep the board control aspect. That was fantastic. And make them high point scorers of you controlling points. But equally, every mission needs to have, I like secondary objectives that you choose, keep them. The main thing I would add is 2 different types of missions. One, where the missions have additional points of things that you can achieve. I know this may make the game like, whoa, you're just scoring points all over the place. But to be honest, by having far more points, it means that it's harder for someone to castle up, score a small amount of points, and then win, versus someone who uses board control in many different aspects to win rather than just shooting, because I felt that was the way with 8th. I think you need to have board control as a way to score points. Each mission should have at least 2 different rules of ways to score points to make each mission feel individual. You keep your secondaries, and that should be your Eternal War. Then your Maelstrom of War is, of course, board control, secondaries, and your cards. So essentially all I'm asking for is the same as what they've done, but when you do your Eternal Wars, is that the missions have, probably the same as board control value. These objectives you can do each turn and score points. And then the Maelstrom ones, and each mission is individual, and then the Maelstrom ones have you use cards. Random events.
Yeah.
If they did that, I would be like, the individuality of each game would go up massively.
I think it would. So the reason I was asking, do you think it would solve the problem or go away to solve the problem? Because I think it will be a contributor to making the game better. I don't think it will fix the current turn 1 issues that we have, because that's now 2 editions worth. And we had
I've got a lot to say on that as well.
Yeah, and we had randomization in the previous game, previous editions, and it still didn't solve the issue. I don't know. I think
when it comes to that one, David, and it's why I really want to try, I've just had no time, especially in the past year, I've not been well enough to play loads and loads of games, is Apocalypse uses tokens and
Yeah.
I think alternate activations, when instead of being turn-based activation, it's alternate activations. And quite frankly, in a game like 40k, where it is loads of units, alternate activation certainly makes more sense to me. I think keeping the phase structure is okay, but when you've got someone firing their full force in one go at you, if there was any phase, I'd say that you need to have alternate. I mean, they kind of do it with fighting phase anyway. You do alternate activation. I feel they should maybe do in the shooting phase as well. Maybe you do your movement, your opponent then does their movement, or maybe you do coins to represent I've moved this unit, you've moved this unit. Same with psychic, but shooting phase, you have to be like, right, I fire. I'm going to say a Baneblade. I know Baneblade isn't good at the moment, but I fire my Baneblade, and then you go, right, that has fired. What are you going to fire next? You're like, well, I'm going to fire my Knight because that's a high value target, and you'll probably fire other stuff to try and stop it. I think alternate activation, it would have to change the whole game. It would be starting a whole new game if we did it. And I'm only speculating because I haven't played an alternate activation game in a wee while of this scale. I think it would really benefit 40k massively.
Okay. Yeah, so I think a year on for the rules, we've still got a way to go, but we're getting there, possibly. Maybe.
I think they debated alternate activation with Apocalypse, but they realized for value, maybe even time, value, whatever, they couldn't commit to it in 9th edition because it would mean all the books, every book that people just bought, including Psychic Awakening, would probably be in the bin.
Because there's a lot of rules which are based on you taking a full turn.
It's just the rules would be, if you change the whole opposite, it's like when we went from 7th to 8th, every book in 7th went out the door because they changed how a lot of stuff worked.
Yeah.
And if you went alternate activation, it would almost be the same. They'd have to redo everything. I think it would stop a lot of, I've got a huge 2,000 point list, I'll blow you off the field before you've done anything. I think alternate activation is the way forward, but I couldn't say for definite.
Fair enough. Well, I think we'll definitely need to revisit the rules for 9th edition because we know that's the one thing that probably moves more than anything else because they're always playtests and they're always trying to revisit it, but it maybe harks back to the beta rules thing we mentioned earlier on. Let us get involved with the rule process a bit more, the public. I know you've got obviously the tournament teams which help work on behalf of GW, but just let the vast public maybe have some opinions on that and submit our feedback. And
they have partly, I mean, I don't think they advertised it very well with the Maelstrom rules.
Yeah, that was
they've got Maelstrom missions in the White Dwarf, I want to say February, but don't quote me. And we've not had a chance to play them yet for various reasons, but I feel that should have maybe been in a chapter approved or something, because there was a lot of complaints from people saying Maelstrom of War was gone, and that's why they brought in a beta a version of it. How successful it is, I don't know, but they have given some aspects to the consumer.
True.
But I don't know if it was the best way. In a White Dwarf, don't know about that one.
Yeah. Well, I think to close it up for me, 9th edition rules. Yeah, I'm just let's see what's ahead of us. We're still a year in of our 3-year process, so let's revisit a year on the midway point and see what they've actually done. See if they've listened as well, and if there's any major changes that we thought they were going to do that, or we didn't think they were going to do that, and see what they say.
Do you want to hear some painful, Dave? The midway point's technically probably December or January.
I know.
Yeah, just because we were about 6-7 weeks too late, and now it's dawning us the halfway point anyway. But yeah, in terms of the rules, I've got personal reasons for not enjoying 9th, and that's on me. But in terms of the rules themselves, I am disappointed in them. I think they've taken a lot of the individuality of each. To put it this way, David, I can't remember a single battle report in 9th edition as well as I can remember them in 8th.
Yeah.
That is a painful thing to say.
Strangely enough, I have to agree, but 8th I'm the same with. My most memorable battle reports come from 7th and backwards.
That's even, well, yeah, I mean,
no, it's just that.
I could name you some good ones, even with Kill Team as well. Do you remember I think it was 40 cultists versus 3 battlesuits Kill Team?
It was all your cultists versus Mattel battlesuits, yes, and it was just...
That was an incredible Kill Team. But
can we survive the Horde?
that was against 7th edition. But even, you are right. I can remember this was at the very end of 7th edition when you had, I think, Baldus, charge a Mauler Fiend, and he needed 6s to get through the armor and absolutely whipped it into oblivion. You needed double 6 in the charge. But the problem is, 9th edition, all the missions feel the same.
Yeah, they do.
And I just struggle to remember them on that side, and that pains me quite a lot.
Yeah. It's at a stage where the missions are so similar, you might as well just set up your board the exact same way every time, because you're going to be playing the same game every time. There is not enough variety.
I think they tried to make the individuality part, which is predetermined deployment zones and objective markers, but that was already a random stuff. You've not added anything in. You've made them predetermined, which they were random beforehand, but they were random then. You've just taken stuff away to make stuff individual, and that's the problem.
Bring back the scatter dice. Bring back the scatter dice. Still, I said that in one of our previous podcasts, that was one of the worst things they could have ever removed from the game. You want to place your objective there? That's absolutely fine. Scatter for it. And that's where your objective lands. Sure luck, see what happens.
It's the old memes of, are you this old? And you put the scatter dice.
The scatter dice, the games were the best back then. They were the best. But hey, we'll come to that. We're coming off topic.
Sounds like you need to play Horus Heresy, David, because that's what they still use, I think.
No, because that will open up a can of investment I don't want to delve into.
Good answer.
Yeah, so not going to happen. Any other 9th edition points, Ross, you want to add before we close up today?
Nah, I think that's important. We've covered the codexes, our thoughts on that. We've covered the models. We've covered what our feelings in terms of the rules and sort of the gameplay in general. I think that's a lot to discuss when it comes to 1 year on 9th edition. Are we going to say it's a positive or negative? Unfortunately, I'm going to say largely a negative, but there's so much to learn from it. And, there has been positives, there have been negatives. I can't say, I'm largely leaning towards the negative side, but that's the nature of an evolving game.
Yeah. I won't be as negative as you, Ross, because you've just said all my thoughts and opinions. But what I will say is, Games Workshop, there is time. You have time on your hand, you have resources on your hand, and you have investment on your hand. Let's see what you do with the next year and a half, or just over a year and a half of 9th edition. And hopefully when we revisit it, we've got nothing but glaring success to talk about. As there are already been successes, we just want more. So guys, let me try and wrap this up for you. So there'll be a replay live on the channel later on this evening once that uploads to YouTube. So any other additional comments you want to add in there, please put it in the comment section below, and we'll obviously take a wee look. Thanks very much again for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this discussion. Let us know your thoughts and opinions, and we hope to see another one